What is up, everybody? Modern shotgun designs require modern shot shell solutions, or maybe the other way around. Either way, Ryan Muckenhern, you're Ryan Muckenhern, and I have 10 minutes to talk about Tungsten Super Shot.
Can I back up a little bit? Mark, that was the best intro I've ever heard on
You
a
like
podcast.
that one, huh?
That was incredible.
Well, thank you. Now we're down to 9 minutes, 30 seconds.
I mean,
But you know what?
I don't care.
I'll let you compliment
don't
me
care.
all day long.
I don't care.
Ryan, this stuff has been around for a while. I guess we're talking, if you're watching on YouTube, we've got a modern turkey-dedicated Benelli autoloader in front of us. It's got a Spark solar on top of it. And again, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the shot shells. These ones happen to be federal TSS loads, 3-inch number 9s going out at about 1,200 feet per second, as the box notes. These things, they pack a wallop, and they do so at distance. But if people were listening, they heard me say number 9 shot.
Yeah.
That sounds small.
This is why I was so skeptical at first. We talked about this ahead of the podcast. I was not a believer.
And you are?
A believer.
I'm a big believer.
Yeah. We even made a song up. I'm not going to sing it, but so let's just jump into what TSS is.
Yeah.
This is an acronym, Tungsten Super Shot. So tungsten is a metal.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very dense metal, and it's used in a lot of different applications. And it turns out if you make it into tiny little spheres and you put multiple hundreds of them inside of a shot shell, it makes probably the most lethal shot payload in existence. And it does so via two means. Weight or density per cc, and then the amount of pellets that you can pack into an equivalent amount of space.
Exactly.
And so last year, a little bit later than this time now, you guys did a deep dive into patterning a shotgun with different loads. And we were doing a recoil comparison, an effectiveness comparison. And it was a huge contrast. It was 12 gauge versus 410.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a crazy talking point. We were talking about hunting turkeys with a 410. And
which in a lot of states, not even legal.
correct. In some,
I think that's changing. It's changing.
Yeah.
The landscape of that is changing because of these modern 410 TSS loads.
Yeah. And so when we look at Tungsten Super Shot and its density, this is again measured in grams per cc. It's like 18 grams per cc versus lead's like what, 11 and a half, 12?
I think something like
yeah.
that.
So it's just a much denser pellet. And because it's denser, you can get away with a smaller diameter shot, which is going to boost penetrating capability without giving up a whole heck of a lot of retained energy downrange. And if you do the balance right, to a degree, a smaller pellet, albeit like a 9 versus a 5 or a 9 versus a 4, is actually going to carry more energy downrange coupled with better penetration, and you get hundreds more.
I was going to say, and just the sheer
hundreds more
quantity. So yeah. I've got a note here, and it's saying that the number 9 shot is more lethal than number 5 shot lead.
Yeah.
Right. Which when I started turkey hunting, number 5 shot lead was kind of like the king of kings.
It's the 44 Magnum of turkey loads.
Right. It was that was 20 some years ago, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. So. Obviously, times has changed. Now, I'm not going to say that lead's ineffective. I've killed a lot of birds at some decent distances with lead 5s and lead 6s, so I'm not trying to diminish the effectiveness. If you've turkey hunted, you probably killed a lot of birds with good old lead shot, and it's still performing famously.
Yeah.
There are just options on the table, commercial options that are available that can increase your overall effectiveness.
Yeah. And point blank, they're a better solution. You start looking at the detractors aside from cost.
That's the only one I'm aware of.
And it's a doozy. They're very expensive.
I think you're looking at probably oftentimes about, I guess I'll speak in terms of 12 gauge. I feel like that's what's most commonly being used for turkeys, even still today. Like $10, $11 a shot.
It is expensive. However, I look at it this way. This is not the same kind of target presentation that we would encounter with aerial targets, right? So I can make a case for a shooter going out and getting a ton of trigger time on a sporting gun or a bird gun, on the clays range. With these rigs, we're treating them almost like a rifle, I guess, with respect to like how we would shoot them, the distances we would shoot them. We're in fixed positions. We're generally not shooting flying targets.
Ideally, and I'd say most often, you're shooting once.
Yep.
Things can get a little Western out there.
Yep.
But,
a clever trick, and this kind of ties into the use of modern optics on shotguns, specifically for turkey hunting, is using inexpensive trap loads for zeroing the gun, figuring out how you hold it, manipulate it, and kind of learning how the dot works, and then switching to the big stuff when you're getting your final pattern all dialed in and roughing it in, so you don't have to chew up a whole bunch of these.
Right, you do your final tuning with the actual loads that you're going to be hunting with.
Correct. So you can get a lot of the same practice, if you will call it that, with the inexpensive stuff. Switch over to the TSS stuff, finalize that pattern, that point of impact, point of aim, and then go out and hunt birds. What I think is especially cool about TSS, aside from having hundreds of more pellets in your swarm, which is, increasing your hit probability by large exponents, is going down in gauge and still retaining effectiveness. So when I started turkey hunting, I think I was 12. My dad gave me a Mossberg 835 Ultimag with like a 2-ounce, 3.5-inch 12-gauge load, because that was convention at the time stated you had to use the howitzer to kill the bird.
Yep.
And I was shooting on a snowmobile trailer. I remember this very well.
Naturally. And
it leveled me. It's very impressive recoil. You don't have to do this anymore. These shot payloads are still hefty. I mean, they're still pretty porky. Like, this is a 3-inch, 1.75 ounce, so recoil is still present, but the velocities are lower because you don't need the screaming fast stuff. And then you can go into sub gauges, 20, 28, 410. A couple of years ago, I reached out to Hal at TSS, tungstensupershot.com, and we got talking about shot shells and load data, and where a shooter should find him or herself focusing on here. And it was pretty apparent right away. He was into the sub gauges. 410's pretty small, pretty light, still effective, but 28 and 20 were really the golden child or golden children of this whole conversation. He thought that those two were the best balance between like pattern density, pellet count, and then like effectiveness in cost and recoil management and all that kind of stuff. And he really lit a fire under me about TSS. Now, I'd shot non-tox shot, so not lead, not steel, but like what we would consider conventional non-tox shot for waterfowl for years. And what it taught me is that a better pellet than steel is better any way you can go. Lead was pretty hard to beat, and then like heavy shot came out and put a number on lead, right? Like really kind of give it a wallop. So I was shooting non-tox, like alloy shot for waterfowl for many years, and then switched over to turkey loads. But I was still
not for waterfowl.
No, yeah, but turkey loads for non-tox turkey loads. I switched over to a 2 3/4 inch number 5 heavy shot, and like I hung my hat on that for like the better part of a decade.
Oh yeah,
it was wildly effective. And then I see this stuff kind of really hit the scene, and I see these super small shot numbers. I'm like, there's no way I'm getting behind that, and I completely ignored the physics behind it.
When you look at the numbers, it's really staggering.
Well, yeah, it is, especially when you look at the pellet count. And at first, I think I was like just being resistant to be resistant, because I'm like, there's no way I'm shooting 9 shot at a turkey. I mean, they're like one step below Tyrannosaurus Rex on the modern landscape. 9s aren't going to do it. But again, I ignored the physics. We're talking about 18 grams per cc density, so spectacularly dense. We are talking equivalent, stopping power is a number 5 pellet, thereabouts. Why wouldn't you? Like better penetration, more pellets, equivalent power per pellet. Like the per pellet energy was definitely there.
Yep. I mean, looking at, and we're already talking like, oh yeah, lead is still effective, but you're looking at a density here, right? Which is a big component of why these smaller shot sizes can be so effective when you're using them, or when they're TSS, Tungsten Super Shot. 56% more dense than lead.
Yeah.
More than half.
It's wild.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So yeah, you transition to like a 7 or 9 shot or something like that. Man, you are in some serious business. And I know going back to the, the 410 or even the 20 or something like that, if you're maybe a newer hunter, maybe a smaller statured hunter, maybe you're a youth getting into hunting, dude, a 3-inch turkey load, that's, that packs a little wallop.
Oh, it's approaching like centerfire Magnum cartridge recoil levels.
Right. So now you're able to, number one, just make the experience more pleasurable.
Yeah.
They're not getting beat up. They're not getting scared of the gun.
Yeah.
They're probably gonna, as they practice better, shoot better. They're not going to develop a flinch. Hopefully not, because of just getting hammered by that Magnum turkey load. Yep. A lot of advantages there. Like, I think about that now as I have 2 young girls. Fingers crossed they want to hunt with me. But when we start, I'll probably go with a 410 and one of these TSS loads.
Yep, and you don't have to be super apprehensive about doing it.
Right.
Because it is effective. Period. So I've got a little Benelli M220 gauge. It's like 5.5, 5.7 pounds. It's trim, super light.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another advantage to TSS, and like what it'll do to a sub gauge like that in terms of like increasing its efficacy and lethality. Now I have this gun that's like 2 pounds lighter than my 12 gauge.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Way more nimble, way more handy, fun to carry. I'm super excited about it. Like, I'm riveted to bring that out turkey hunting. I've never killed a turkey with a 20 gauge.
Me either.
And now I'm really excited to, because it is going to be lighter recoiling and more effective than the 12 gauge loads that I've been shooting for the past however many years.
It's so interesting to watch, I guess, that evolution of, like, you think of like early turkey days, like we're talking about a little bit, like, oh man, you need a 10 gauge, you need a 12 gauge with 3.5s, and now we're like, oh, you could certainly get by with a 410.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, like, I think there's some balance to be struck there, I guess, for like the not the masses, but like how people are going to most commonly turkey hunt,
sure.
I guess, and I think that probably does fall in that 10 or that 12, 20 range as far as gauge. But,
I wouldn't tell somebody, if you've got a 12 gauge, you've been hunting with turkeys with it, hang it up because it's no good anymore. That's not the case.
Right.
If anything, when you look at it, having a TSS load and a 12 gauge is just like doubling down on your effectiveness. Is it excessive? Maybe. I don't know. Can you really kill a turkey too dead?
I do not think so.
No. So if you've got a 12 gauge, use it, right? Pick up some TSS and give it a whirl. One thing that floored me, and I've become somewhat obsessed with it over the years, especially when I was shooting, other types of non-toxic shot, was pattern, like performance. And what we've been seeing with TSS loads of really any kind, whether they're hand loaded or whether they're factory bought or whatever, is that their patterns are phenomenal. Just exquisite.
Well, not only is it more dense, it's a harder metal.
Yeah.
It's less prone to deformity.
Yep.
So is that what's giving it, I guess, more of that consistent shot pattern?
I think partly, and a lot of it is WAD technology too. So like these are very, very like purpose-built turkey loads.
Yes.
And so
I was reading about that.
They've really honed this in. And then now the load data that's out there, and if you go to like tungstensupershot.com and get a chance to chat with Hal over there, they've figured out what WADs work really well with whatever gauge you're shooting, whatever shot size you're shooting. And the patterns are nuts. They're just simply nuts. They've even gotten so good at this now that they're really narrowing your choke tube choices down. Because before it was kind of the Wild West. It's like you had this massive smattering of choke tubes that you had to pick to help optimize the shot, because if it wasn't restricted enough, now we don't have this great pattern. Sure, you've got denser pellets and you got this high performance stuff. But if your pattern was kind of junky, like it didn't really do any good. And if you over-choked, then you blew your pattern and then you had bigger problems. Now the science has gotten to the point where like this combination results in like 50-yard ethical, fantastic, beehives of number 9 shot flying out. So it's really cool. It's super cool.
I think you point out a good thing, and it's just good practice to pattern your shotgun, right?
Oh, yeah.
But definitely do that.
Yeah.
Definitely do that, because you might find, personal story, my father went to some TSS, which worked famously for me, and then that load didn't pattern well out of his shotgun at all.
Yeah.
And then he went to just a slightly different one, and it was, lights out.
Yeah.
Let's kill some
Oh,
turkeys.
there's still a ton of, individuality in the gun, like the whole ammunition shotgun choke tube system. Like everyone's going to be different. But now, like, folks have honed in on this. Like I said, you go on some of these forums where these guys are talking about this stuff, and there's a great chance that somebody's tried the combination that you have in your safe right now. And they're like, this choke, this shell, this load, good to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. To me, I guess I started using lead alternatives, I don't know, a long time, maybe almost 20 years ago. We've talked about it before on the podcast. I was using that, original Remington Heavy Shot with the cool green shell.
The semi-translucent ones, you can see the pellets in there?
No. I don't think. I'll bring them in.
I might be off the...
I know when I shake them, kind of the
buffer comes out.
The buffer comes out a little bit. Hasn't seemed to affect performance because I've laid a lot of birds down. I have very few of them left, so now I've kind of gone away from using them. I'm like, oh, these are like collector's items. But anyway, extremely effective. Yeah. And then again, even as the evolution goes, going into these, and I think one thing to an analogy. We're talking about these incredibly dense things, and I guess think of how if I threw a baseball at you,
please don't,
versus a wiffle ball, how far away could I hit you with the baseball? Further than with the wiffle ball, right? And how is that going to feel when it hits you?
Hurts.
It's going to hurt.
Yeah.
Versus the wiffle ball. So I think that's kind of like a good analogy. I think I read that in an article as well. I was like, that makes a lot of sense, right?
Yep.
It's going to go farther. It's going to hit harder, and that's exactly what this TSS loads are doing. And, and I like we always talk about. You want to be. We're always looking for an edge.
Yep.
Be more effective, be more ethical, cleaner kills. This is one way you can head towards that mission.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm waiting to see the waterfowl world catch on to it. Like, there's load data out there for waterfowl, and you can buy tungsten waterfowl loads, but with TSS specifically, it's pretty infrequent. I think it's volume of shooting, right? And then we're wing shooting, so there's an element of, did I lead that properly and miss? And it's an expensive miss. But can you imagine shooting late season divers screaming across the deeks in a ball of birds, and you're shooting a swarm of 9s, and they're fatal at 40 yards? Like,
it'd be I think, at least in my mind, it's almost like an expensive experiment. I'm hesitant to try because you're like, I get 25 of these, But also, if you're only shooting once versus 3 times, hopefully, right?
And I saw the same thing when I switched from budget box steel shot to non-tox. And part of it was I became a better wing shooter. The other part of it was I was hitting birds and they were just dead in the air.
Right.
And then TSS has taken that to another level yet. So I hope somebody out there is going to give this a whirl. I want to see a big old row of greenheads late season or cold water diver hunts with TSS.
I think I was reading an article about folks that had transitioned to TSS for waterfowl, and again, definitely, I think it was still about $4 a shot, but I don't know. I'd have to try it for myself to make a final determination there as far as where the value lies. But there's a lot of value in not leaving cripples out there as well. Yep. I know I lost my train of thought there a little bit. It has been known to happen. It's happened before, Ryan. But when I was talking about, I guess when I started using, those Remington Heavy Shots, and to me, even just the last few years with, these federal TSS and other TSS commercial options, you're like, oh, it's new. It seems new.
It's old.
It's old. I mean, folks, reloaders have been doing this for years. It's almost like this was wildcatted, and then boom, commercial stuff, caught on, and here we are, and you can go buy it at your local sports shop.
Yeah. I think the shot technology was always sound. It was the wad, the buffer, the crimp style, all the other things that go into making a shot shell super effective and consistent. So even with this federal loading, you'll notice there's not a star crimp over the top. It's a roll crimp, and then they've got a plastic overshot wad or overshot card on it.
Right.
Buffer's not coming out.
Right.
It's environmentally sealed. And this is the kind of crimp that you see on high-performance shotgun slugs and how they dictate accuracy. And this crimp is significant, and the way that they're using that overshot card on there, that plastic card, is significant. The buffer that's in there is significant. And I think it was like probably maybe not 20 years, but a decade and a half of waiting for the rest of the shot shell technology to catch up to what the shot was capable of and then be available commercially. Because undoubtedly, 20 years ago, and I think tungsten has been on the scene as long as I've been cognizant of shot shells in some form or iteration, people have figured it out, and it's been wildly effective. I think now it's just commercially wildly effective.
Ryan, the bottom line, this stuff is super effective for those folks listening out there, as you head into the turkey woods this spring, consider getting some TSS. In fact, I encourage you to try some TSS, get it all patterned up, get it ready for the turkey woods, add a red dot to your kit, and overall, be more effective and bring more birds to bag.
Yep, I like it.
I like it.
Turkey schnitzel.
Turkey schnitzel. Good luck out there, everybody. Bye.
Bye.